Hi everybody, welcome to Jacey's Creek. My name is Emily. Today we are doing Season 2, Episode 15, and this came out on February 17th, 1999. So the first scene that we have is Scene 1 of Pacey, and he's in Dawson's room because of what happened last time. At first I want to say that Tom Cruise was on the screen when we first started watching this scene. And I found that really funny because of Katie Holmes. She married Tom Cruise for I want to say 6 years, and she had a daughter with him. So it was very interesting to see him now that I know everything that went on with them. So he is Jerry on the screen, and he says, "I'm starting a new company. The fish will come with me, and you can call me Sentimental." And then Dawson walks in, and Dawson says, "Dawson Leary, personal homework carrier, has arrived, apparently just in time for a private screening in his home theater." And Pacey says, "Dawson, when my suspension is over, I'll go back home tomorrow. But until then, I will risk you getting sick of me for invading your personal domain, because hiding out of here and outlining you beats the hell out of the torture and death in the hands of my father at home." I do think it's sad that Pacey had to hide from his dad because he was scared of what he was gonna do. But I think why he was scared was I think he was gonna get beat up or something. And so Dawson says, "Well, I'm happy to help. I'm just saying that I'll be happy when my room returns to its ordinary owner and odor." So Jerry Margot again, huh? And Pacey says, "Yeah, I'm running into a continuous loop. It speaks to a current situation as revered motor cruiser. So what's new in the land of higher education?" And Dawson says, "Well, pretty much the same old, plus the same sexual identity crisis." And Pacey asks, "How's Shaq?" And Dawson says, "Well, he seems okay. He's kind of keeping a low profile." And he asks about Joey, which he goes, "And Joey?" And Dawson goes, "She's fine." And he goes, "Andy?" And Dawson says, last I heard, she ran off to ballet with a Brazil soap star named Diego. I mean, she's very happy though and tan." And then he said, would you just call her, you idiot? I mean, I can't believe you just let it go by a week without even talking to her." And Pacey says, "Dawson, it's not that easy, okay? Annie thinks I'm responsible for dragging another McPhee scandals through the school quarters." Dawson says, "No, last week you seem impressed. Right now you're just in avoidance." So Dawson never knew, I don't think. He probably did know what happened between Andy and Pacey, which was their little fight from last episode. But I think with how Pacey's avoiding Andy was not wrong in any type of way. I would be avoiding her too. I think when she yelled at him, he knew to back away and leave her alone, which was very sad for him. But also at the same time, I think he was doing the right thing by respecting her space. Unlike Dawson, who we've said several times does not respect anyone's space. And Dawson says, "And he lost everything. And then Pacey continues by saying, "I don't want to apologize to her, Dawson. I just stood up for something that I believed in and I think was right. I mean, look at my man Jerry here. His mission statement, he took a stand." And Dawson says, "And he lost everything. He had to beg, grumble, and crawl to get back. And he was not sleeping in his best friend's floor." And Pacey says, "I thought you said I could have the bed tonight." And Dawson says, "I don't think so." And Pacey says, "Joey gets the bed." And Dawson starts laughing and he says, "Don't go there." So I do find it funny that Pacey does get the floor and Dawson and Joey doesn't. But I think it's mostly I think Dawson does respect Joey enough to give her the space with the bed, but also it's very awkward when they're in bed together. And then we have Scene 1 of Joey, and I want to say that Joey has a picture of her and her mom in this her locker that's about to come up, and I find it really cute. And then she has like a few other pictures. I wish I had a locker, but nowadays we don't have a locker. We just have our backpacks, which they still carry their backpacks, which must be nice. So then we cut to Joey digging in her locker and Jack standing behind her. And Jack's like, how deep does this thing go? And Joey says, I can't find my economics book. And she hands him a book and a purse. And then he gets made fun of because this guy says, ooh, nice purse, McPhee. And Jack says, let me know if you want to borrow it sometime, Morgan. And Joey says, what a jerk. Which I think that, Jack said that, it just made people encourage, they were encouraging him more to, make fun of him. And Jack says, whatever, and Joey says, it would be nice if writing a commentary would stop that all. And Jack says, and what, give up my role as the most talked about non-homosexual? And Joey says, you know what I mean? I mean, Jack, you're not gay. It does make me, a little bit mad throughout the whole, 2 episodes to deny that he's gay. But honestly, it was him and his problem alone. So that's why she, doesn't really know if he's, gay or not. And she says, so what is the joy in talking about something that has already been reviewed? And Jack says, well, we're gonna have to go fight with fire and fire here. So what do you say? We make love on the student green. And Joey stops, not in the mood for joking around. And Jack says, wait, even better. We could end me. We could have a going into the closet party, and then everyone could come as their favorite straight person. And Joey laughs, and she says, get to class, straight boy. And Jack says, no, that's a bubba to you. And he kisses her on the cheek and walks down the hallway, and Joey's face drops when she saw Dawson walking up, and Dawson says, I know that look. And Joey said, yeah, okay, well, you will still get that look, but you can't ask, okay? And Dawson says, okay, tonight, well, Jen has convinced me to tag along to this club that Ty likes. You want to come? And Joey says, I can't. And Dawson says, okay. And Joey says, I'm sorry, but thank you for asking. It's, Jeff, and I have plans to study. And Dawson says, oh, sounds like fun. And Joey says, we have been forcing too much on fun recently because of the whole scandal. That's why they were facing too much fun, because they want to deny everything that's happening. And Dawson says, well, maybe you should come. You should invite him to come along with us. Or you could, I can't believe I'm suggesting this, just make plans for something with you two alone, maybe even something romantic. And and Joe says, Dawson, Larry, I can't believe you're giving me relationship advice. And Dawson says, there's easier in the world. Anyway, I noticed. I gotta go. So, I think it's kind of funny that Joey is getting relationship advice from Dawson when Dawson can't even, get his own, act together. And Joey just looks at him what a nice guy. But, I can't get over the fact that, she just takes it. Where is that advice when you actually need it, Dawson? And Joey calls Dawson's name, and he says yeah, and she says nothing, and then he smiles, and he goes to class, and Joey's eyebrow kind of scratches up, and she goes to class. So then we have scene 2 of Pacey, and it cuts to Peterson's creative writing class, or English. I don't really know what it is, to be completely honest, what class they were in. I felt like they were in English, but now I don't really know. So I figured out it was creative writing. Anyway, Mr. Peterson is handing out the papers, and he's kind of going through it, and he hands Pacey the paper, and he says, what a delight it is to have you return. Tell me, did you think of us while you were on Hennis? And Pacey says, every day. And Pacey points, and Mr. Peterson, pointing to the paper, says, what's that? And Pacey says, it's all the 4 assignments that I missed while I was gone. I didn't want to take the risk of getting any incomplete on them. And Mr. Peterson says, I'll be sure to take your leaves into consideration. And this poetry assignment, I'm sorry you weren't able to get it sooner. And he gives Pacey an F. And Pacey says, what exactly was wrong with this? And Mr. Peterson says, well, in my educational analyst, it's neat. And Pacey says, so as my teacher, you have no comments or advice, or how I might be consumed a poem more to your liking? And Mr. Peterson says, yes, write better. From now on, people, your grades will be essential for my personal space. Though your talent as intelligent and ability will have no problem for the rest of you to come to terms with your intended failure. So, Mr. Peterson is just failing everybody because Pacey made him mad. So that's how that whole scene is going. And I kind of find it like, why the heck is this guy even teaching if he doesn't want to be here? Like, there was no purpose of him just like continue this whole like teaching career if he was just, like Pacey said, a sad, lonely old man. Like, he was a very sad, lonely old man, and it was just like, what was the purpose of him continue teaching if he didn't want to do it? The scene that we have is scene 3 of Pacey, and it cuts to Dawson and Pacey in the cafeteria, and he's looking at his poem. And Pacey says, he's starting to fail me. And Dawson says, and you can't drop it because you're halfway through the semester. And Pacey says, bingo, which leads me to about 7.4 on this curvature. And Andy walks into the cafeteria and takes a seat by herself, and she kind of looks at Pacey, and Pacey says, or make that a 7.8. The theories of a massive disaster. And Dawson says, go talk to her, and Pacey says, she saw me, she could come over. And Dawson says, Pacey, go. And Pacey says, I will. I just want to give it a second. Like, just give it a second to soak in. I really do like how Pacey doesn't rush into things. But at the same time, it sometimes, like, bites him in the butt later. But I think this scene was right because he just needed a second to, like, cool off. And he needed Andy to cool off because both of them were kind of in the, like, the wrong in both ways. But at the same time, they weren't. So then we have scene 2 of Joey, and it cuts to Jack sitting at the table, and Joey walks up and hands him a piece of paper, and Jack asks, what's this? And Joey says, a menu, and Jack says, I realize that, and Joey says, look, if you don't like anything, just let me know, that's what I'll be cooking tonight. And Jack's like, who for? And Joey's like, you and me, we're going on a dinner to end all dinners at my house on the dot. And I was thinking what it leads from there, only the fate can say. And Jack says, that sounds romantic. And Joey says, well, that's the plan, Stan. And Jack says, you're on to something, Joey. And Joey says, and Jack says, I don't know what I'd do without you supporting me. And Joey says, well, it goes with the territory of kind of dating you. And she kissed him on the cheek, which I guess was romantic, but I do like how Jack was like, who for? Like, she's handing you a menu, who do you think it's for? So then we have scene 4 of Pacey, and it cuts to Pacey and Dawson. Pacey is watching Andy, and he gets up and walks over, and Andy says hi, and Pacey says hi, and you can just tell it's very, very awkward. And Andy says, you haven't called, and Pacey says, last time I checked, my phone hasn't had an incoming line. And Andy says, you left the stranded on the pier after telling me I was weak and insensitive. I really wasn't up to talking to you. And Pacey says back, and you judged me and abandoned me when I needed you the most. I thought I'd wait for you to call. And Andy says, my call. And I called and say what? And Pacey says, for starters, I'm sorry. And Andy says, I agree. I'm sorry would be nice to hear. Look, was there anything you wanted to say? Because I wasn't really I don't think we're really making progress here. Because Andy's like, what's the point of him coming over if he's not going to apologize? So both of them are kind of like, you didn't call me, I didn't call you, so what's the purpose of talking? And Pacey says, well, Andy, I thought I saw you sitting here and I'd like to come say hello. Any progress beyond that I haven't really considered. And Andy says, well, consider this. Hello is typically followed by one thing. And Annie closes her book and packs up, and she says goodbye, and she walks out the cafeteria, leaving Pacey behind. Which, man, she just really said, oops, no, like, I don't want to talk to you, you don't want to talk to me, I'll say goodbye right now, just to save us everything and everyone. So, this episode was kind of followed from the last episode, which I think was kind of nice, but it was just like Annie and Pacey made no progress, so like the scenes are a lot shorter with Annie and Joey, which is okay, but you can just tell that like throughout the whole episode it's just falling from last episode, and we'll see later what happens. So then we have scene 3 of Joey, and it cuts to Joey packing napkins, candles, etc. into a picnic basket. And she looks amazing. If you know the scene where she like looks in the mirror and she like flops her hair up, you know what I'm talking about. And the phone rings and Joey says hello, and Jack on the other end says, a romantic evening for two? And Joey says yes. And Jack says, I can't come. And Joey's concerned and she says why, and Jack says, it's my dad. He came in from Rhode Island. He wants to take Andy and me to dinner. So I feel like the scenes are a lot shorter, so this episode may be shorter, and I was telling you guys, like, it follows from the last episode, but really, like, the main character in this episode is Jack. So that's why the whole, like, scenes are a lot more, like, out there. And Joey looks confused and says, well, that's good, right? And Jack says, yeah, hardly. Milo called him, told him everything that's been going on at school, so I think I might have to take a rain check. And Joey's disappointed, but she says, well, that's completely understandable. And Jack says, I'm sorry, Joey. I hope I haven't ruined your whole evening. And Joey says, don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I'll find something to do. And Jack says, alright, well, I'll see you later. And Joey says, yeah, I'll see you later. And Jack says, thanks, Joey. And Joey says bye, and Jack says bye. And she hangs up and walks over to the mirror, and she takes her hair down, and then she remembers about Dawson, so she calls Dawson. So then we have scene 4 of Joey, and it cuts to the Blues Club where Jen and Ty were at, and Dawson and Joey are following Jen and Ty, and Dawson says, okay, this place cannot be cedar. And Joey says, Dawson, it's not that bad. I mean, it sure beats sitting at home feeling dumb. And Dawson says, yeah, but, and they all sit at the table watching the singer, and Dawson says, so, Ty, I take it you come here a lot? And Ty says, yeah, it's practically home. And the waiter says, what would be Ty? And Ty says, 4 usuals. And Joey says, what's a usual? And Ty says, it's a surprise. I rather stiff surprise. And Joey says, I'll take a Coke, and I don't know whether that's alcohol or not. And so Dawson says, me too, and everyone claps for the singer, and the singer says, Ty, it's your turn, and Ty says, studio calls, and he walks up and he plays the piano, and Dawson says, what's he doing? And Jen says, I have no idea, and he starts playing the piano, and Dawson says, okay, and Joey says, where he learned to play like that? And Jen says, church, and Dawson says, what is his deal? I mean, doesn't and Dawson asks what his deal is for religion, and Jen says, yeah, well, he's got issues, and Joey says, he's perfect for you. And Jen says, thank you so much, which I love how Joey's like, oh, he's got issues, well, good, because I'm glad. And Jen says, oh, you mean the parameter triangle. And Dawson says, I mean, I'm single, sandwiched in between 2 women who've both done me. It's pathetic. And Jen says, hey, look at me. I'm dating a Bible bummy hypocrite, okay? And Joey says, hey, my boyfriend might be gay. And they all laugh, and Jen calls for the bartender, and Dawson says 3 usuals, and Joey says hurry, and they laugh again. Which I do like this scene because I feel like Dawson, Jen, and Joey have never gotten along, and then finally they do. So then we have scene 6 of Pacey, and it cuts to Pacey at the library, and the librarian says, there are 4 codes of contract finals for every public job in the county, including teaching guidelines. Not that I care, but why exactly are you doing this? And Pacey says, just trying to make the best out of a bad situation. This is going to take forever. And the librarian says, no, this is going to take 20 minutes. We're closing. And Pacey sighs. And at first when I watched this scene, I thought Andy was on the other side because there was a girl with blonde hair, but sadly that was not it. I was like, oh, okay. And so then we have scene 5 of Joey, and it cuts to Joey and Dawson slow dancing, and Dawson says, so you having a good time? And Joey says, actually, yeah. And Dawson says, good. And Joey says, thanks. And Dawson says, yeah, me too. I'm sorry your plans didn't work out, but I'm really glad you're here. Jack is missing out. And they keep dancing. And Joey says, you think he's gay, don't you? And Dawson says, I never said that. And Joey's like, please. And Dawson says, okay, the thought has crossed my mind once. And Joey raises an eyebrow. So obviously they're somewhat drunk in the scene, I guess, because they had like the 4 usuals or whatever. And after Dawson said it may have crossed my mind once, he then says twice, I don't know, I know you better than, you know him better than I do. And Joey says, yeah, I do. And Dawson says, and you know him as well as me. And Joey says, of course not yet. I mean, I can't read his eyes the way I can read yours. And Dawson says, so what are my eyes saying right now? And Joey says, what are your eyes saying is how comfortable it is for us to be together like this, together as friends. And Dawson says, you're good. And it cuts to Dawson walking Joey home, and Joey says, you know, you didn't have to walk me home. And Dawson says, well, maybe I wanted to. How are you doing? And Joey says, okay, I guess. And Dawson says, did the Blues Club make you more blue? And Joey says, yeah. And Dawson says, want to talk about it? And Joey says, it's stupid. And she opens the door, and Dawson follows him, and Dawson says, if it's stupid, then you're talking to the right person, okay? I happen to be the world's experience when it comes to stupidity. And Joey says, can I ask you something straightforward and honest? And Dawson says, yeah, you know you can. And Dawson says, and Joey says, am I asexual? And Dawson says, what? And Joey says, the thing is, I know Jack's not gay, but obviously comfortable about something, and it keeps him at a distance, and I was wondering if you choose me because I'm safe, which is very true for Dawson's sake, because I feel like Dawson and Joey always choose each other because they're safe, and Jack chooses her because she is safe, and we have talked about this before. Joey even chooses Jack because he's just there. And so Joey's like, what makes me safe? And Joey says, look at me. I'm Joey Potter, virgin at large. I don't really have any experience with men or relationships or sex. And Dawson says, Joey, you are extremely sexual, which is very, very awkward. I just want to say that. And it just makes me feel like, okay. And Joey just automatically knows that he doesn't see it. And she's like, you fell for Jen, sex machine. I was something else to you. And Dawson says, Joey, I was stupid. It took me time to see where it was. And Joey says, and what was there? And Dawson says, what was there was one amazingly sexy girl. And Joey says, your sexuality, he says, Joey, your sexuality is everything you do. Your wit, your intelligence, your anger, your fearfulness. I see it more and more each day. You're blossoming, and it's extremely sexy. And Joey says, thanks, Dawson. And I feel like Dawson was saying this, like, as a best friend, not, like, as, like, a crush or anything. And he was like, I was too blind to see it. But, like, I think he's even blind to see it now. Like, where was he fighting for Joey? Like, he never really fought for her. He was just like, oh, Jack with the one who messed with my whole relationship, therefore I'm not talking to Joey. Like, that's kind of how the whole past episodes have been since the dance. And then Joey says thanks, and Dawson says, look, I don't think the question is why why Jack chose you. I think the real question is, why did you choose Jack? And Dawson walks through the door and he says goodnight, and Joey says goodnight. So I feel like even Dawson knew that Joey chose Jack because he was safe. And scene 10 of Pacey comes up, and it cuts to the principal arriving at school, and Pacey is waiting. And Pacey says, "Principal," and the principal then says, "Pacey, judging from your tardiness record, I didn't think you would rise before 10. And again, what's up with the teachers just automatically like cutting Pacey down, because that's exactly what they did in this scene. And Pacey hands her some papers, and the principal says, "What's this?" And Pacey says, "It's a document I prepared. I checked out the state blinders on the professionals addicts for teachers, and it turns out Mr. Pearson is in violation of almost every single one." And the principal says, "What's your point here?" Which, the point is that the man, like, continues to, like, mess with Pacey and Jack and everyone else. And the principal doesn't even see that. And it's kind of sad that she trusts the man's, like, the old man's word versus the kid's words. And Pacey says, all educationers should be maintain a professional relationship with all students in a manner and free of integrity, recurrence, and history and harassment. Want me to keep reading? And the principal says, "What are you suggesting? That I call Mr. Pearson to my office and give him the Saturday detention?" Pacey says, "No, you don't have to do anything. That folder contains almost over 20 testaments from students that I gathered last night. There's a school board meeting on Tuesday, and I want to send a copy of every single person on the board. I want this man publicly recommended for his behavior." And the principal says, "I hope you know what you're doing, Pacey." And Pacey says, "I'm sorry I had to go. I'm sorry I had to go around Principal Markey, but I just had to do what was best for the crisis." And he walks away. I keep coughing because it's the morning time, so my voice is just everywhere. But I feel like when Principal Markey was like, "What's your point here?" I feel like that was such a rude scene in so many different ways, because the point here was that the kid needed help, and your main job is to help the kids, and what are you doing? You're not helping the kids. So what was the point of you being a principal if you were just gonna say, "No, it's okay, I'd rather not deal with this today"? Like, okay, like, I'd rather not go to school today, but I still have to. And the fact that kids have to deal with this teacher who doesn't want to go to school, who proves that he doesn't want to go to school, it's just proof that, like, the principal didn't even care, because he's like, well, this man's word is just over the top, so I don't want to make my school feel bad or anything like that because of you. And that's exactly what the principal was trying to prove. So the next scene we have of Pacey is scene 12 of Pacey, and it cuts to Jack and everyone reading a sign on Peterson's door, and Pacey walks up and Pacey says, "What's going on?" And Jack says, "No Peterson today. We're supposed to go to study hall up in the library." And Pacey says, And Jack says, "Pacey, I've been meaning to tell you something for a while. Thank you." And Pacey says, "You're welcome, man." And Pacey looks in the classroom and sees Peterson sitting at the desk, and he goes into the room, and Pacey says, "Why isn't the class in session?" And Peterson says, "Oh, you didn't get the latest update. Your favorite teacher is leaving this godforsaken insincerity." And Pacey says, "I don't get it. You haven't even gone before the board yet." And Mr. Peterson says, "Please, you don't think I really appeared before some collection of idiot parrots that have to tell me what's wrong for the past 30 years. I'd rather eat dirt." Like, this man is so lonely, and it just proves throughout the whole, 2 episodes that we've been dealing with him. And I really, this is probably, my least favorite character of the whole entire show. It goes from the note that he put at the door from the study session, then, the letter that he had to do with Jack, which, why didn't you quit or, resign for the whole year if you didn't want to be in there? And then it goes on to, like, now, where he's like, I'd rather eat dirt than be with, like, parents telling me what a bad job I've been doing for the past 30 years. And he continues by saying, I was planning on retiring in 6 months, but your action gave me every reason in the world to make an early exit. And Pacey says, Mr. Peterson, this feels like a late coming, but I am sorry. And Mr. Peterson said, that stunt was one of the most admiring moments of your life. Don't ruin it with an apology. And Pacey says, you're unbelievable, man. What is inside you that makes you so damn mean? And Mr. Peterson says, Mr. Witter, as an awful man as you find me, you came here to learn from me. And Pacey says, I learned, sir. I learned that respect is not a command through fear. It is earned through compassion. And I love how Pacey says that. Like, it's not a respect. I'm going to repeat it again. I have learned, sir, that I have respect is not a command through fear. It is learned through compassion. So, like, when people say respect is earned, I think that's generally what it means. It doesn't mean that you have to be, like, nice about it. It means that if people are being disrespectful to you, you have to show it with some type of compassion, but not really at the same time. Don't be in fear of what you have to say, because all those kids were in fear of what they had to say. And Mr. Peterson says, then tell me this, should I respect you? Your respect for ending my career? Where is the compassion in that? And he leaves Pacey alone in the classroom. Which, I mean, he wanted to end his career. He even said that he's been waiting to do this, and there was no point in him being like, oh, you know what? Why should I have respect for you since you ended my career? I mean, you were the worst teacher in the whole world. And Pacey finally just said, nope, I had enough. And then we have scene 6 of Pacey. And it cuts to Pacey walking on the student green, and he spots Andy, who spots him, who closes her book and gets up and walks toward Pacey, and she says, I've been looking for you. And Pacey says, no, actually, I came to talk to you. And Andy says, no, before you say a word, Pacey, I need to say I wanted to apologize. And Pacey says, no, I came to apologize. And this kind of goes on, like, no, I should be the one. I've been treating you so unfairly. That's what Andy says. And Pacey says, no, I hurt you with my little cruise, okay? I never thought how much it would affect you. I just got obsessed. And he says, wait a minute. Why do you get to be the only one who apologized? And Pacey says, why are you arguing about this? And Andy says, because I failed you. And Pacey says, I was self-righteous to the point of outlining everything I cared about. And Pacey says, but I forced you to live up to unreasonable expectation. And Pacey says, okay, McPhee, shut up and let me apologize, okay? I do think this scene was good because it just shows how much anxiety Andy has at times versus what Pacey has. And he's just like, shut up and let me be the first one to talk because this isn't going to go anywhere. And Pacey says, this last week without you has been loving hell. And I don't ever want to go through any moment like that. I'm sorry, McPhee. And Andy says, you're forgiven. And Pacey says, it's your turn now. And Andy says, it's just I molded you into this person of what I thought you should be. And I did with my father, too. I thought it was what I needed, you know. I placed this unfair burden on people just because they saved me from myself. But I realized that I don't need a knight in armor charmer. I need a partner. Someone I'm proud to love and who's proud to love me back in spite of all my faults, and it's you. You're the one, Pacey. I'm sorry. And Pacey says, how come your apology was so much better than mine? I always lose to you, Andy. And they kiss, and Pacey says, I take that back. I'm definitely the winner here. So I do like how Andy does realize that like she was in the wrong because she didn't support Pacey as much as she needed to. But I do feel like this was because of Jack's like coming out to his father, and we see that in the real episode, but obviously we don't cover that because Joey nor Pacey were in that. But I do feel like because he came out and he said the things that he needed to say, that was one of the reasons why Andy realized that she didn't need like a knight in shining armor like she needed. But I feel like it was because of her dad's issues that made her rely on Pacey so much, because she never got that like reliance. And then we have scene 7 of Joey, and it cuts to Joey walking towards or cuts to Jack walking towards Joey, who is guiding candles outside of her house for their dinner. And Joey says, "Hey, you're early. I haven't finished lighting the candles, and the food's still inside." And they kiss quickly, and Jack says, "Well, this is magnificent." And Joey says, "Yeah, I'm pretty impressed if I were you." And Jack says, "You should have done this." And Joey says, "I wanted to." And Jack says, "I know, but you should have." And Joey says, "This is where I say, uh-oh, right?" And Jack says, "Look, Joey, I don't really know where to start." And Joey says, "Just be honest with me. I mean, this time, just be honest, please." Because she knows that he's gay. And Jack said, "This morning I told my father I was gay." And Joey says, "So you are. You're gay." And Jack says, I'm not." And Joey says, "You're not gay." And Jack says, "No." And Joey says, "You're part gay." And Joey laughs. And Joey says, "Don't laugh at me. I don't know what you're trying to say. You're gay." And Jack nods while crying, and Joey starts to nod. And then Jack explains, "When I wrote that poem, it clicked something inside of me that has been quiet for a long time. And it made me realize that whatever it is I'm going through is not gonna go away, maybe ever. Joey, I care about you so much. You've been such a good friend to me, and that's why I can't stand the thought of losing you. But I don't want to hurt you either." And Joey says, I know the rest. Thank you for being honest with me." And Jack reaches across the table and grabs her hand, and he says, "Thank you for being here." And it cuts to Dawson laying in bed watching TV, and Joey crawls to the window, and when Dawson looks at her, you can just tell that she's been crying. And she walks over and lays her head on his chest and cries, and Dawson kisses the top of her head, and she continues to cry, and it ends right there. So the next episode we have is episode 16, which we will be covering next time we talk. But I just wanted to say that, one, this episode was mixed up with like Jack in a lot of ways, and a lot of things happened with Pacey, obviously with Mr. Peterson, when Mr. Peterson left, and Jack also kind of left Joey in a lot of ways. But I feel like when Jack has to deal with this, he was going through so much pain, and then finally it like dawns on Joey, like, this isn't about me, like, Jack is actually, gay, and she goes to the one person that makes her feel safe, which is Dawson. And I feel like when we're watching this episode, you can just tell how much it hurts Joey in a lot of ways that she never gets the guy. And when she asked Dawson if she's sexual, it really meant like, why aren't you falling for me? And when Dawson says, and it's like, you go into a safe place with Jack, and Joey's like, oh yeah. And when Jack comes up to her and she can automatically tell something's wrong, he like tells her like, I'm not gay, because he's still denying it. And Joey's like, part gay? And Jack's like, no. And Joey's like, just tell me what it is. And then finally he did, and she rushes to Dawson because that's her safe person. And Dawson earlier, like, he asked who her safe person was. It was Jack in a lot of ways, but it was also Dawson, because anytime something went wrong with Jack, she always went to Dawson. And that's what I really mean by like the whole thing with like how it was with Jack and Joey. Like, it wasn't the fact that they were like together, it was the fact that like Joey really had to deal with everything. And it was the fact that like, because Dawson and Joey weren't together, she always runs to him because she feels like that's her safe place, when really Jack was her safe place. And then finally that's done with, so Dawson is her safe place again. It goes like back and forth over and over again. If one doesn't meet the expectation of Joey, then the other will like run to them. And it's just a very, very complicated like episode with Joey, because finally she kind of realized that something was wrong. And then with Pacey, it was like Andy, it was like another thing with Andy. Like, Andy didn't realize what Pacey was doing until Jack came out, and then that's when she apologized, because I feel like when Jack came out, that was when it hit her, like, oh, even Pacey knew this, and how could I be a bad sister? And I feel like that's when it really hit her that she needed to be more supportive of her brother. And then Pacey sees Mr. Peterson go off, and he says that one line that I really like, that it's not respect is based off of not showing compassion. And I really like that scene so much because it just shows how Pacey is just he's not fearing of anyone. And he does this a lot. He doesn't do it just to teacher. Like, he stands up to a lot of people throughout the whole show. And I feel like this is mostly the first time that we see the next season, we see of when Joey has that mural and that guy destroys it, then Pacey goes after him because he wasn't fearful of what was going to happen. He wasn't scared of what was going to happen. And that's when the next season, season 4, it goes back to his graduation. Like, he wasn't scared of that either. And then season 5, it goes to his boss, and season 6, it goes to his boss. And then season 1, I think it goes with Tamara, like I said last episode. I feel like he wasn't ever scared of what was gonna happen because he knew what to be scared of. Like, he knew he's been dealing with his dad for years and years and years, and I feel like that's one of the reasons why he doesn't fear what people are gonna say, because he's been dealing with one of the worst men in his entire life. Therefore, he wasn't scared of how anyone was going to react to him. He was just scared of losing people he loved because he has that fear of people just dropping him like everyone else in his life. And that's what I think about Pacey. And with Joey, she kind of relates to that a lot of ways, and that's why I think they kind of connect in this episode. So, if you like this episode, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, where I will be posting every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to follow my Instagram, Witter and Potter, and my TikTok, Pacey and Joey. And I'll catch you next time. Bye, guys!